Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a drama movie called The Social Network. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in 2003 in Massachusetts as Harvard student Mark Zuckerberg is on a date with his girlfriend Erica Albright. Mark talks fast, and his points are all across the board, from IQs of Chinese people to his SAT scores. He also talks about final clubs, social organizations that provide community to the wealthier students of Harvard University. Through their conversation, it is evident that Mark desperately wants to get into any one of the final clubs. But because he jumps from one subject to another so quickly, Erica has trouble keeping track of the conversation. She innocently asks which final club is the easiest to get into, but Mark takes it as an insult. He retaliates by saying that if he gets into a final club, she'll meet people she normally wouldn't have the opportunity to because she goes to a less prestigious institute. Upon hearing this, an enraged Erica breaks up with him on the spot. She also makes it clear that people hate him, not because he is a nerd, but because he is a douchebag. Following this, Mark goes home and drunkenly posts degrading things about Erica on his blog. He then hacks into the directories of 7 different houses at Harvard, which includes images and details about students. Mark downloads their pictures and sets up a website called Face Smash, where people get to vote between 2 girls on the basis of their attractiveness. After a while, Mark's friends and economics major Eduardo Savarin comes over to his dorm and asks if he's alright. It is revealed that Eduardo learned about his breakup with Erica by reading his mean-spirited blog. However, Mark is currently obsessed with his new idea and asks Eduardo to help him write a formula that will make rating people easy. After initial reluctance, the business major shares the formula, which becomes an integral part of FaceMash's algorithm. The website then goes live, and within a few hours, it blows up as students all over campus start using FaceMash. As the number of users keeps rising, Eduardo suggests shutting the website down as it's generating too much traffic. This could get them in serious trouble. True to his assumption, the authorities soon catch wind of it and shut down their network. The movie then jumps to 2009, where Eduardo and Mark are engaged in a lawsuit. It is revealed that FaceMash made 22,000 hits in 2 hours that night, meaning a lot of people took part in ranking girls based on their physical appearance. This has given Mark a bad look in front of opposing lawyers. Back in 2003, twins Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, who are also Harvard students, hear about Mark and his hijacking of the students' database. They have been working on developing a new software project and think Mark might be able to write code for them. Meanwhile, in 2008, the Winklevoss twins are also in a lawsuit battle against Mark, accusing him of stealing their idea, which inspired the creation of Facebook. Back in 2003, an administrative board hearing is held which punishes Mark with 6 months of academic probation. He is found guilty of breach of privacy and unauthorized sharing of images. Right after the disciplinary hearing, the Winklevoss twins interact with Mark and invite him to their final club, the Porcelain. The 2 brothers are tall, muscular, and are on the university's rowing team. Their athletic, wealthy background, as well as being members of the most prestigious and oldest final club at Harvard, immediately stirs a deep insecurity in Mark. But he still agrees to go with them, as he's curious about what they want to say. At the Porcelain Clubhouse, Mark meets Divya Narendra, a close friend of the Winklevoss twins and computer science major. The trio then discuss their ideas with Mark about creating a website called Harvard Connection. This website will allow people to create their own pages, bios, upload their pics, and also allow people to connect by sending friend requests. The twins arrogantly point that their site will be different from existing websites because it will only allow users within the domain harvard.edu, making it exclusive. Nonetheless, Mark agrees to work with them as they require a good programmer for the site's creation. Back in the lawsuit meeting in 2009, Mark is questioned as to when he shared the idea of Facebook with his close pal Eduardo. He thinks for a while and reveals that it was at a fraternity party. The scene shifts back to 2003 to the aforementioned party. Eduardo tells Mark that he's been approached by the Phoenix, a final club that Mark desperately wanted to get into. Despite being slightly jealous, Mark shares the idea of building a social site that will document the experience of college life. He needs financial support for this project and asks Eduardo to invest $1,000. The profits will be split. Mark will get 70% and Eduardo will get 30%. Furthermore, Mark promises to make his best friend the CFO of the company. In 2009, Eduardo is asked asked if he knew about Mark's agreement with the Winklevoss twins, he reveals that they had asked Mark to work for them, but he gave up on the idea quite soon because it wasn't worth his time. We are then shown a montage of scenes depicting Mark fleeing from the Winklevoss twins, bailing out on meetings, and making several excuses for weeks. He tricks them into thinking that he's working on the Harvard connection, but in reality, he is actually working on creating his own website, the Facebook, which is very much influenced by their idea. Following this, the scene shifts back to 2004, where we see Mark daydreaming in his computer science class. One of his friends, Dustin Moskovitz, asks him for advice about a girl he's interested in. This lights a bulb in Mark's head, and he immediately runs back to his dorm to add the feature of relationship status on the Facebook. He says that relationships are how people will find, pursue, and connect with the person they're interested in. By this time, the Facebook is operating as intended. Mark then sends email links to all the members of the final clubs so that the Facebook's popularity grows due to word of mouth. Divya and the Winklevoss twins soon find out about it and are enraged that Zuckerberg stole their idea, just as he would later in his life steal drip ideas from teenagers. Elsewhere, at a seminar hosted by Bill Gates, Eduardo meets two Asian girls, Christy and Alice. They are eager to go on a date with the co-founders of the Facebook, which is now the talk of the university. Later that night, we see Eduardo and Mark engaging in a serious conversation. Eduardo wants to monetize their website, but Mark thinks it's not a good idea, as it could damage their cool, ad-free image. A few days later, they go to a club and have fun with Christy and Alice. After a makeout session in the bathroom, Mark sees Erica having dinner nearby and tries to talk to her, but she's still mad at him for shaming her on the internet, so she scolds him rudely. As a result, a humiliated Mark thinks of yet another plan. He decides to expand the website to Yale and Columbia as a form of retribution. In the meantime, a Californian entrepreneur, Sean Parker, is checking his emails when he finds out about the Facebook and gets intrigued by it. Spring break soon arrives, and Eduardo and Mark go to New York for several business meetings. While Eduardo takes the meeting seriously, Mark is usually indifferent to them. He is only excited about the last meeting, which is set up by Sean Parker, the founder of digital audio file distribution app Napster. Eduardo is nervous about the meeting and doesn't want to work with Sean, as he has a sketchy past of drug use and adultery, but Mark assures him that it is the right thing to do. After a while, the meeting begins, and Sean says their company has the potential to make it to $1 billion, and that he wants Mark to come to California. He also suggests that they drop "the" from the website's name and simply call it Facebook. Following this, we are taken back to 2009 to the lawsuit meeting. Lawyers representing Eduardo discussed that in 2004, 65% of shares were allocated for Mark, 30% for Eduardo, and 5% for Dustin. Eduardo is then asked if he ever did anything to jeopardize the company. Enraged and embarrassed, he recalls the time the Phoenix Club members bullied him. They asked him to have a live chicken with him wherever he went. The members claimed it was part of the initiation ceremony into the club. One day, Eduardo took the chicken to a restaurant and ate meat in front of it. This ended up being used against him as animal cruelty, and he became the laughingstock of the college. The scene shifts back to 2004, where Mark needs more money to hire new interns and get a rented house in California. Eduardo is vehemently opposed to this idea, but his friend is dead set on going to California for the summer. Later that night, they hit 150,000 Facebook members. Eduardo finds a couple of students working on hacking, while Mark is supervising them, making sure only the best are chosen as interns. As a celebration for reaching such large members, Eduardo informs Mark that he opened a bank account for Facebook with $18,000. Despite their differences, a plan is eventually made. Eduardo will generate advertiser interest in New York, while Mark, Dustin, and the interns work in California. In the next scene, Mark finds out that Sean Parker resides across the street from his Californian home. The two meet later that night at a club to discuss business. Sean says that he'll put Facebook on 2 continents, promising to expand it to the UK. In return, Mark says that Sean can live with him and the rest of the group. Several weeks later, the Winklevoss twins are participating in the Henley Royal Regatta, a rowing competition among the Ivy League colleges. They end up losing and are extremely upset. To add to their woes, they find out that Facebook is accessible in Cambridge, Oxford, and London School of Economics. This enrages the twins so much that they, along with Divya, decide to sue Mark in a federal court. Back at Zuckerberg's Californian home, Sean is on the phone when Eduardo shows up drenched in rain. It turns out Mark was supposed to pick him up at the airport, but he fell asleep after coding for several hours. Eduardo is further enraged when he learns that Sean has arranged a meeting with Peter Thiel, a famous angel investor. He and Mark then have a private conversation, and it is revealed that Eduardo quit his summer internship on the first day, and Christy has been giving him a tough time. Mark suggests he should blend in and join the scene in California, or else he'll get left behind. Enraged by the thought of being left out of Facebook, Eduardo later freezes the bank account he made for Facebook. On the other hand, the meeting with Peter Thiel is successful, as Mark and Sean get a $500,000 investment for the social networking site. That night, as Eduardo is alone in his apartment, Christy suddenly shows up. Jealous that he might have been flirting with other women, she made an overnight trip to San Francisco, and the two immediately start fighting. At this moment, Mark calls and confronts Eduardo about freezing the bank account. He explains that the entire charm of Facebook is that it's always online, and without the bank account, it runs the risk of crashing and tainting the company's reputation. While this is happening, Christy sets fire to the apartment's dustbin. Fortunately, Eduardo manages to put it out, while simultaneously telling Mark that he froze the account to get his attention. In response, Mark reveals about the Peter Thiel investment being successful and asks him to come to San Francisco as soon as possible. Delighted at the news, Eduardo says he's coming. He's coming right out of his wrists. In the next scene, he arrives in San Francisco and meets the company's lawyers, signing several contracts. Eduardo's shares have now gone up to 34.4% from 30%, but the increase in percentage meant little, as the number of company's shares were about to be increased, making the price of each share lower. The scene then shifts to the lawsuit meeting in 2009, where the lawyers ask Eduardo if he had any idea what was about to happen with the percentage of his shares. Eduardo replies that he did not have the remotest idea about any of it. The movie skips back to 2004, where Mark reveals to Eduardo that he wouldn't be returning to Harvard for a semester. In late November, Eduardo got an email from Mark about the millionth member party. He also mentions how they need to have a business meeting because Mark and Sean have got case equity to make them a lucrative investment offer. Days later, Eduardo visits the new offices of Facebook in California, but he's utterly shocked when he learns that his shares have been diluted down to 0.03%. He feels betrayed and angrily tells Mark that he'll come back for every single penny. After Eduardo leaves, the whole office celebrates as they hit 1 million members and start planning for a big party. In the following scene, Sean and 4 young interns get into a room and begin snorting drugs. Suddenly, the police show up and the situation gets messier. It turns out one of the interns lied about being 21 when she was actually underage. This news reaches Mark, who is still working in Facebook's office. He comes to realize that Sean is not a trustworthy character after all. The scene then shifts to 2009 as Mark is chatting with a junior lawyer in his defense team, Marilyn Delpy. She tells him that there will eventually be a settlement agreement and he'll have to pay more because the jury won't support him. She asks him to visualize how several past events and his arrogant attitude looks to a jury. Upon hearing this, Mark realizes that his awkward, arrogant behavior will only help to paint him as a villain in this case, and thus he agrees for the settlement. After he is left alone, Mark sends Erica Albright a friend request on Facebook and refreshes the page continuously. As the movie closes, it is revealed that the Winklevoss twins received a settlement of $65 million and signed a non-disclosure agreement. Eduardo received an undisclosed settlement and also got his name restored on the Facebook masthead as a co-founder. Meanwhile, Facebook continues to thrive, leaving Mark as the youngest billionaire in the world. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.